everyone. Thanks for joining us here this evening at this Future of Kindness event brought to you by Henley. My name is John, and I currently run the marketing at Henley. I'm also a student at Henley. I'm just finishing up an MBA, which is why I have to shave the sides of my head. It's a little bit grey, but it's been good. So thanks for joining us. Some of you might know that I used to be a very filthy, rude comedian. I've stopped that now. I don't do it anymore, and I'll explain that a little bit before we kick off. But I just want to talk a little bit about the format tonight. So tonight's a replay of a conversation we had, myself, Faith, and John. And once that's done, I've trimmed it down a little bit myself because we've learned at Henley in recent kind of times, especially with the virtual environment, a lot of the great learning that happens doesn't come out of the content. Where it comes is from you. So when we say panel discussion, you will be the panel. And what I'll arrange is as soon as we've played the video, is we will then elevate you all to the panel, and we'd like to have a conversation, and we'll capture as much as we can in the chat. So during the video, you can put your thoughts down, you can do all that stuff. You can see Graham's in the background, you can see Yusuf's around. I've got a few other people lurking from Henley just to give me a hand to capture the thinking. This is based on a very successful model of something we did with a huge mining company. We did 21 conversations with management using kind of really interesting conversations. It's important what John says in the conversation. It's also important what Faith has to say. I mean, these are two kind of very cool human beings. Kind of a leading educator who's done a remarkable job in the last 10 years of making what was a very small business school quite an important player by being more inclusive and paying attention to what education really means. If I can sum it up in my own words, certainly found me in a very strange place, and you wouldn't think I belong in a business school, but I've loved it so much. I'm actually arranging, hopefully, if I do well enough, I'm going to carry on and do a doctorate. I'm kind of in love with the idea of learning, and I don't want to slow down because I'm running out of time. 47. So I don't know why I did that, and I said 47. Actually, I did 6. You can see I didn't do well on the finance module. Anyway, so. Please interact with us. I'll be watching the chat with huge enthusiasm. We'll use what we learn and your comments and thoughts and insights. We're going to use that to guide the conversation afterwards. So the video will be about 50 minutes, and we'd like to spend the rest of the time hearing from you. It's all about what the audience has to say, and that has a lot to do with why I stopped performing comedy in South Africa. I just felt that I wasn't helping the situation. I was essentially gathering people in groups, and then we would find the lowest common denominator, which you might call working the room. I think there's a better way to work a room, and that's teaching. I think great teachers don't find the lowest common denominator. What we do as a group is we reach for our highest common denominator. What's the highest point we can all reach together, rather than finding the kind of accent that's going to get the laugh, or the stupid kind of basically misogynist joke, or something that's kind of a dumb social stereotype that we all agree is hilarious. It's not hilarious. Sometimes it's hateful, and we just don't even realize we're doing it. We're kind of fundamentally building structural prejudice. I know that sounds really like nothing a comedian would say, but I did it for a long time, and I suddenly felt quite guilty about what I've helped to achieve, which is some of the dialogue I read on Twitter, which is really lowest common denominator. Democracy kind of means that everyone has a voice. That's true, but you have to earn the right to be listened to. I didn't just do rude jokes. I went to Parliament to sort of with some very clever advocates, and we had to protest against the hate speech bill, for example. I want people who are racist to be arrested. I think it's important that we stamp that out. But I think art needs to be a place where we ventilate dangerous ideas in a safe space so that we can push the boundaries. It should be the same in the classroom. I feel the classes I teach are a little bit more robust, but more, they're not for the faint of heart. I try and be gentle, but it's all about big ideas smashing together. And we believe in strong opinions lightly held. So that leads me to tonight. And something I've come to really love about Henley is we're not afraid to investigate things that might come across as a bit twee. And so this idea of kindness, we all think of the meme with the cat, and that's like, oh, I don't think that's kindness. I think when you help a loved one to die, when they're ill, and you step up for them, I've done that. That's a kindness that is brutal. It's bruising. It's disturbing. It asks you for a lot. For me, that's kindness. Sometimes doing the hard thing is kind. Sometimes saying no is kind. And so we're going to talk a lot about this in this conversation. But what I really want to get to is I want to play the video. I want to put in, the thoughts from John and from Faith. Faith's amazing. It's just a ridiculous story of how we met, but it's all due to a friend called Carmen Murray, also works in and around Henley, also studying. Just reached out to one of her heroes, and amazingly, Faith responded. And the next thing, she was in South Africa doing some work with one of her big corporate clients. We ended up at dinner with her. We just got on really well. We did a podcast. Carmen introduced her to another friend of ours, Karen Zoy. They've recorded an album now. So just an all-out kind of interesting human being. And what struck me about Faith, and why we felt that John was a good connector, because he's a great teacher in a very robust way. Faith's version of understanding the future is about being hyper-present right now. And she always says there's no crystal ball, there's no mystery in the data. It's not like there's this clairvoyant thing. If you pay attention to what is going on now, you will know more or less what's going to happen next. And I thought that was very cool. So in conversation with them separately, because I'm a bit of a seeker, I look for ideas, I look for teachers, I'm always looking for kind of counsel. I realized that one of the world's greatest kind of future trend predictors with a very good track record, and one of my favorite educators, I wish I'd met him when I was, in high school, and I would have not, hated that period of learning as much as I did. But both of them seem to have come to this idea that if you want to look at what the future needs, it's probably kindness. And not only as something that's good, but also a business strategy. I know that sounds crazy, but all will be revealed. So what I'd like to do is I'll invite you, please, to use the chat. Use it as your scratch pad. You can write thoughts, notes. Let's all agree that the 52 of us that are here will not judge each other's comments. That's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for you to be right or wrong or better than someone else. That's not the idea. That would not be a classroom. But allow people, just let the thoughts flow and put them in the chat. And you're going to find we're going to have a really profound chat at the end. If we suspend our judgment and just let the ideas just pour out of you, put them down. I will commit to recording that, if that's cool with all of you. Also want to know that we're recording this. At the end of the video, we'll switch on all of your ability to get involved. You'll just raise your hand when you're ready, your digital hand. It's at the bottom of the screen. You'll see it there, raise hand. Once you come onto the panel, it might look a little bit different, but that's all you have to do. I'll try and get to all of you. I'll try and keep a track. And we're going to create together this incredible conversation in the recording and in the chat. And then we're going to try and extract from that. And I'm going to commit to all of you that I will email you a graphic representation of what we speak about this evening. It's a rich way to learn and reference, and it can remind your brain really quickly about ideas and how they formed and how they ended up. So we'll explore a bit of that. I've got to just organize our graphic harvester, but she'll do that after the fact. So that's what's going to happen. Thanks for joining us. It's my favorite format of spending a kind of an evening in a webinar idea where we all get involved. So without too much ado, let's play the video. It's about 50 minutes. If it goes down for any reason, and that's possible, although the wonderful Graham is helping me tonight. He's actually at the Henley office where our best internet connection is. So he'll play it out for us. Thank you, Graham. And then we will talk afterwards. So without any further ado, one of the best conversations I've been involved in the last 3 or 4 years. I see that there was a hand up, but I'm gonna, unless you have a huge issue, let's see who's got their hand up, because I can do that, you see. Let's have a look. Okay, I can't see a hand up. Tom Bentley, if you want to put your comment in the chat, and then I'll quickly deal with that, and then we can kick off the video. And Tom Bentley, do you want to type into the chat? You can just address it to panelists and attendees, and then let's have a look at that. And if I need to deal with it before we start, I can. I mean, I'm excited that there are questions before we even start. That's an eager learner, without doubt. I see your hand went down. Okay, well, that's cool. We also keep it very informal around here, even though people are getting master's degrees and trying to get stuff done. It's not fancy. We don't like that fancy stuff. We just bust the jargon. Everyone's welcome. So, okay, I see the hands down. I'll wait to see if anything comes up in the chat. If while the conversation is going on, you have a thought or a question, bang it in the chat. We'll mark it and we'll get back to it when we discuss. Okay, Graham, may I ask you to play our video, please, sir? Thank you. Here we go. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We're very excited to be here. It's certainly one of the most interesting conversations I think I'm going to have in lockdown. So I'm very excited. And I'm just going to put a little caveat in. I think there's the biggest thunderstorm ever created is about to fall on my house. So if you hear some crazy sounds, that'll just be a famous Johannesburg thunderstorm. And I'll try and mute my mic wherever I can. It's going to be a very interesting conversation. We've got 90 minutes, and I'm really glad to be in a position where I could get two of my favorite people to talk to in one room. Across the impossible odds of geography, virology, timing, it all just happened. So thanks to everyone who made it possible. We'd like to talk today on a topic that's been really spoken about a lot. In fact, if you just look online, you'll see kittens, you'll see all kinds of soft focus memes, and really a lot of inane, what I call digital diabetes, just inane nonsense about this idea of kindness. Today, I hope we can dive into it and talk a little bit more about its nuts and bolts, what to do about it, what it is, why it's important, and not just as a thing that makes you feel good, but perhaps even a strategy to future-proof business. So to talk about this, who else would you talk to other than someone I was very lucky to meet in the recent past? I've always read about Faith, I've always read Faith's work, but finally, I was able to meet Faith Popcorn. Hi, Faith. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Faith, the thing that struck me about when we first met was a lot of people ask you about the future as if it's some kind of crystal ball gazing exercise, because deep down they want that edge on everyone else. But what struck me about our conversation the first time we met was you're so incredibly present right now, and that's really what you focus on, which I found so much more brilliant than people who expect you to be some kind of oracle. So would you agree that that's a reasonable take?
Yes, I think that's perfect. I mean, I know they called me, this was embarrassing a bit, but they called me the Nostradamus of marketing, and those kind of things. And I will say this, we put a lot of hard work in research interviews, and John can attest to the other John, the smart John. We put a lot of research and work into our predictions. We've been 95% correct. It's a lot of hard work, but I will give you this: there is a leap. Some people like data is the most disappointing thing in a way, because you can have all the data in the world, right? But it really doesn't tell you what's going to happen. So that's us.
And also, anyone who researches Nostradamus will tell you that all his good stuff got great publicity, but he was wrong about a lot of stuff too.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then, of course, our other guest, my academic mentor, become a long-time friend of mine, but one of the most radical minds in teaching. And I know John hates when I talk about him like this, but often the smartest guy in the room. It's John Foster-Pedley, the Dean and Director of Henley Business School. Thanks for coming, John.
Oh, well, I'm not the smartest guy in the room today, am I? So there we go. I never am when you're around, John, as well.
Well,
there you go.
It's quite funny. We talk about the smartest guy in the room, but that may not be the smartest person in the room by any stretch. So that's good. So I wanted to just begin this conversation, just dive right in. And what I thought would be a great context was we're emerging, it seems we're emerging, and seems really is the key word here, but we're emerging from a period of what I might call quite dark leadership around the world. You've got the menace of Putin, you've had the era of Trump, we've had in our own country, Jacob Zuma's kind of what they call the 10 missing years. So there's been a great deal of rule by, let's call it unkindness, a very kind of acquisitive, kind of a dangerous grabbing of assets and power and control. Just the announcement of Joe Biden in the recent days has caused this ebullient kind of celebration. Just like when Jacob Zuma was replaced as the head of the ANC, huge celebration, outpouring of good feeling, no evidence whatsoever that these things will actually change our reality. How do you feel about that, Faith? This kind of
I have to say, I mean, I hate to disagree with you, John.
Please do.
The pretty one, but here's the thing. It will change reality, because what we believe is reality. And we really believe that, in our case, Biden will bring some goodness, some balance, some stability, some sanity. Who ever thought we would look forward to sanity, some folksiness? to America, and all over the world, they've been saying "Welcome back, America." So I do think that in this case, it will make a difference. And I know we're going to get to this, but one thing Joe Biden is kind. And I think kind is going to be the new meme of the future. I think that's what people are looking for, a little bit of love, a little bit of kindness, maybe a little money in your mailbox, but we'll get to that later.
Cool. John, your thoughts on where we've come in terms of leadership in the recent past?
Well, it reminds me of that thing is you can never be happy unless you've suffered, unless you know pain, or sadness, because there's this relative thing going on. And so what we've had with the recent past, both here in South Africa, in the Zuma years, the just relentless and public state capture, nobody could believe that anyone would do that and get away with it. And then that's mirrored in what happened with Trump in the Trump years. And that's for me, but I'm very conscious that nearly 70 million people voted for the Republicans and Trump. So there's something there, but seeing this behavior, this corrosive behavior that made me and many people want to cringe, just highlighted how difficult it is to be consistently kind in, as you say, a non-digital diabetes way. How the heck do you do that and still let life progress in such a tough world we live in? So is there room for kindness? Or are we going to give way to cynicism?
Yes, I think so. I think so. I know you think so too. You're a big sentimentalist, John, sir. So I picked that up in our chats. I absolutely think there's plenty of room for kindness, and there's plenty of room for love. And it's not just a girl thing. And I think that we're going to see a lot of that in the near future. The kindness in the street, getting in the way of somebody that's being unkind. Maybe we can't really hug right now with the pandemic, but we can verbally hug. And I do. They don't call me Cassandra for nothing. I do see that coming.
So do you think that? Sorry, there is thunder. You see, you're not the only one who disagrees with me.
Great sound effects, yeah. Thor's
So would you say that, based on what John was saying about you've got to suffer first and then emerge? Do you think that maybe COVID has set us up for a better future in terms of recalibrating about what's important?
Yes,
it's come closer to us. The pain, the loss. Perhaps this has actually set us up for a more kind future.
Yes, I do. I have to say I agree with John. I don't think that the desire for goodness and kindness, and we have that in our trend bank, in the SOS trend, Save Our Society, it's been in there maybe 30 years. I do think the contrast between the lockdown, virus, people we love being lost, the economy being hit, and then when you see some spark of goodness, it sort of radiates and it has a sharper outline. So I agree with him, and I will say that COVID is not the only thing that's contagious. Kindness is contagious.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
John, as an educator, John, do you agree with that? And do you think that's an important part of great education, perhaps?
I totally do. There was some research done a few years ago saying that the sort of cynical, negative leaders and managers were perceived to be more intelligent. So if you want to be more intelligent, you have that sort of world weariness. Yeah, man, but it's never going to work. Let's just do this thing. And it's just such BS. It is rubbish. It's harder to be optimistic and awake. It's quite easy to be optimistic and, asleep.
Yeah, you're right.
But how do you be optimistic and awake? And I remember I was in my 20s, and I'd had this sort of period in my life. I wandered through alternative life. When I had hair, it was long. And I was living in ashram.
Pictures.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah, not as glam as you, Faith, but there you go. But I remember I was really low. It was a grey day in Manchester. I was working the civil service and some job to pay off. And I was really low, and I was just sitting on the side of this road thinking, what's it all about? And I saw, and this is so classic, but it's true, I saw an old lady crossing the road, And as she was crossing the road, somebody walked over to help her. And it was, I remember to this day, it was like a blind, I felt totally uplifted. And what it is, we get into this sense where you only look at the cynical, you only look at the negative, you only look at the unkind, you start to let it corrode at you. And you just stop noticing the infinite acts of kindness that are holding that balance somewhere in the middle. You see this stuff, but this stuff is held in force by all that stuff we stop noticing. And there is, I totally agree with Faith that kindness is contagious. And what's more, it's totally necessary. You know, we forget to notice that. And in education, what we want to do, motivation and kindness is part of education. I was chatting to my boy the other day. Sorry, you got me in a role here. But I was saying, how would you like to be taught? And he says, well, I liked positive reinforcement. And I said, yeah, if you want a better world and we want people to learn quicker, give them positive reinforcement. And you're going to get that learning curve shooting up. So I'm a great believer in worldly kindness. Yeah.
It's the same way we train a dog. We ignore the bad things and we reward the good things. And people are really no different. I remember a story. There's a woman named Ilse Wagner who works at Investec, which is a client of ours in South Africa. Beautiful client, my God. Anyway, she was saying, you get a little bit of tough in your end of the world because you see a lot of people like without a job, sitting on the street, homeless, some of that here too. And she was saying that she passed this guy and she went into the store and she bought what she bought, but it was bothering her. And then when she came out, she gave him some money or a dinner. And, this is the same woman that supports, a whole school of young kids. And this is not, the bank, she loves the bank, but it is her individual support for these children in this school. And I know when we came, we brought them pens and pencils and toys and everything, but that was just for a moment. She's there every day. And I think that when you see the cynicism, right? And the meanness and the madness, there's something that comes out of your childlike soul that is kind and good. And I don't think people are laughing at it that much. And I think that, even though it's not heretofore, a masculine trait, because women are supposed to be the softies, I think it's becoming a masculine trait as well. I think it's a unigender trait now. And if you don't believe me, pay the person in back of you on the supermarket line, pay for their groceries. Pay in back of you on the car line, pay for their toll. They'll just rush up and just thank you. We're seeing people leave tomatoes in somebody's mailbox or some cash, a teddy bear, or even a sourdough starter. I think we're finding that we don't have to save the whole world because it's just too overwhelming, so we do nothing. But I think when we see these little bits of sweetness and kindness, I think it's contagious, as I said. It's catching.
So, just from what you were saying, and I think we've all felt that. Like we've all actually felt, we've experienced that effect on us once we do something good, and yet people resist it. The man at the street light with no money, when your car stops, he becomes invisible to many people. They look the other way. They kind of get on their cell phone.
Right.
They don't want to face them. What do you think it is that stops us from just simply doing something good?
It's guilt. I think it's guilt. I don't think it's evil. I think it's guilt. I think you look at that person and that person reminds you of how lucky you are, how fortunate you are. And I think you can't bear it. And also they're not that pretty and maybe they don't smell that good. And I think that you run from this. I always send I have 2 Chinese children adopted. One is 16 and one's 22. And to her horror, when we pass somebody, I always make her go back and, put some money in a cup, because I want them to say to her, I want her to hear their voice when they say, they say sometimes God bless you or whatever. And that's for a few dollars. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of people turn their back, and it is scary sometimes, you don't open your car window, right? But yeah, we open our car window and, I'm not saying I'm the kindest person in the world. I'm sure I have a lot to learn, but it's, maybe, John, you should have a course on kindness. Maybe it has to be taught.
Well, there's a thought. And there's a very interesting thought, Faith. Love it. How would you, I mean, is kindness taught or is it caught? You know, that's
Just
that
like,
old.
what is it?
How would you get a bunch of people to be kinder? And why would that be a good thing? Why would that be a good thing? Apart from the sort of immediate flush of emotion, wow, we feel great, and then we've got that sort of
Yeah.
endorphin. Why in the big scheme of things?
Because it changes the air. It changes the environment. It changes the molecules. And I think that's the part you could teach, that excuse me, when people are kind, just your surrounding. You know, I'm often maybe not kind. You know where my unkindness comes, just for true confession here, is in my impatience. And, you know, when you go like, hurry up, or, you know, like, and why isn't this here? And why didn't they think of it? That impatience. But, you know, I'm trying to get a handle on that, because it's not a kind thing to say. If people could do it better, they probably would be doing it better. So I think that what you would teach in your course, maybe I could be a visiting assistant to you, John.
Faith, you've got the job.
I would love it.
In fact, why don't we use the chat section here to get advice?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I saw a wonderful comment here from a really nice man I know, Francois, and he's talking about kindness and appreciation, and saying that from appreciation, optimism is born. And there's something about unkindness. I think to me is, you know, we're kind. I think we're naturally kind when we are even with people, when we see people, when you're engaged, when you're not othering people. And I think if you other people to your advantage, I think it's a mechanism. We other color, we other gender, we other race, we other, you know, or Jews and Christians and, you know, we make people two-dimensional. And I think the moment you can make people two-dimensional, you can tribalize them and you can build up your in-group at their expense. But if you can see everybody's humanity, which is the most dangerous and scary and provocative thing of all, then we can really work together. And I think that appreciating other people's activities does breed optimism. And why would we get out of bed if we weren't optimistic? Yes, to survive, because we're going to, you know, but that's sort of Hobbesian, life is nasty, brutal, and short. I don't think that's what we want. I think we actually want a life that's got quality. And how brave is it to be kind? How brave is it to hold kindness in face of everything that drags you down?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think when we teach our course, we're going to see a lot of great results, because we're literally going to change the atmosphere. You know, I just want to mention that I met a very important person now in my life on your show with John, you know, and Carmen, and her name is Corinne Zoid. And I think it was you or Carmen was saying, like, what's the thing you want to do most in the world that you never told anybody? What a brilliant question. And I said, I've always wanted to write a rock song. And Karen, I mean, I didn't even know really that she was such a super rock star queen, you know, said, I will help you. And we've been working on an album all these months. I think it's been 7 months since you asked that question. And what's interesting about it, I'm working with her and her business partner, Corinne Loopser. We're doing this album about the future in review, you know, what the future looks like. It's based on the work. And also Corinne is going to do a documentary based on this. And the reason I bring this up, not just for a free commercial, because we're not ready to, you know, really share it, but is this. Every time I write lyrics, they're like a little bit sad, you know, and dank. And Corinne's always saying, put some love in this, put some, you know, put some kindness in this. You know, she sees it as her job to lift people and make them feel better, not to reflect the sadness that, you know, that we see all around us. It's our choice. Look at something, and do you see the good in it, the kindness in it? Are you going to pass that kindness on? Tell me this. Tell me a person that doesn't look at a little kitten or a little piglet, my favorite, or a little puppy, and feel something primitive in their heart, or a baby. Why are we always smelling babies? I mean, you know, because it brings forth this protectiveness and this love and this kindness. And being like a ruffian from the Lower East Side, and I come from the East Village, which is really tough, was a tough neighborhood. I do think that the kindness is the one thing that perpetuates. We've seen it in every culture. How many Germans, or how many Polish people saved Jews? Being a Jew, I'm very, I mean, that was they called it bravery, but it was also kindness. And I do think that's a little bit of DNA in our system that we need to perpetuate. We need to feed it. How do we feed kindness? With kindness.
Historically, if we look at the world figures who have preached kindness, we often kill them early. We hunt them down and we kill them. And it's interesting to me because John mentioned the idea of comedy, intelligence being linked with cynicism and negativity. And I would agree with that hugely. I think a lot of comedians make a living out of being really dark. I did. And yet the greatest stand-up tour of all time has been Ricky Gervais talking about kindness, exactly this.
Yeah. And isn't Beyonce in Peloton celebrating Black colleges? There's Peloton's a bike,
Yeah.
Black colleges and universities. Don't we see our stars, not only Corinne, but others, saying be good, be kind, lift, So I do think maybe it's making a return. And maybe we'll stop yelling at people for being kind. Maybe we'll stop telling boys, like, buck up, be strong, be tough. Maybe we'll be a little more gentle, and we'll have a lot nicer men when they grow up.
Faith, we spoke quite a lot when we spoke previously about the fluidity of the future, becoming more fluid, more comfortable with fluidity. I know that you phrase it differently, but that's kind of how I assimilated it. I thought it was a really brilliant idea. Do you think that that's part of it? I know, John, you spoke really amazingly the other day about your son and your daughter, and just they kind of expected roles in this world right now. Growing up as a young boy is difficult because you're kind of accused of toxic masculinity before you even know what that means, and you become a victim of it. So perhaps fluidity is part of the journey to kindness, becoming more fluid with concepts, as you mentioned. Kindness not being the home of the gentle or the meek. We have all these crazy sayings: the meek will inherit the earth. You've got to be cruel to be kind. These terrible confusions around kindness. Perhaps fluidity has a role.
I would say that. I mean, the thing that really fascinates me is that it's about being awake and being aware. So fluidity is important. If you decide you don't have to be awake, you make a model of the world in your own head. This is how the world is. I've got a dogma. I've got a credo. Whatever it is, you've got a whole set of things built up inside you that help you see the world. So the truth, you see the world as you are, not as it is. But if you can see the world, it's constantly changing, constantly confusing. And you're unfiltering to a degree, so you can look straight in somebody's eyes, and that person is as the same as you as a human. If you're able to do that, you have to be fluid. You can't stick. I believe in strong opinions lightly held, not strong opinions strongly held.
I love that. Yeah.
So you can be fluid and move. And how can you not be fluid if you're kind? I mean, the essence of it is you have to change how you are all the time in response to what you're observing. And sometimes, and the idea of linking kindness with courage is unbelievably powerful, because to be kind properly is enormously brave. Because everyone's going to get at you at some way or another. Not everyone, but you're going to be got at big time. So you've got to be very, very confident and clear and willing to take on a lot of pressure if you want to be kind.
John and also I think it was with Carmen, we were talking about maybe this Christmas, because Christmas is coming. I think one of you were saying kindness instead of Christmas. It takes the Christ out of it, but it makes it more of a gentle, sweet holiday, kindness. And maybe you, instead of buying more stuff for your kids or, wasting money, you just start to give it out. I think what Carmen was saying, like on Thanksgiving, she and her friends, they just make a lot of turkeys and stuff. And, even though you don't really celebrate Thanksgiving, although you have a lot to be thankful for, they take it to the street and give people dinners. I mean, that's pretty kind. And, If somebody's nice to you, do you know that it actually changes your biochemistry for that moment? Your actual biochemistry, your genetic little biology perks up. You know, if somebody gives you a compliment, do you notice that? You feel like an idiot, but you go like, oh my God, thank you. I'm always saying thank you because somebody's nice to me, because when you run a company, nobody ever thinks to say, that was really good, you know, that's your job. But somebody says that to you, such a sucker, you go, oh, thank you, you know. So I think today we should give a lot of people compliments, call your mothers and, you know, thank them, and then call your fathers, call your grandparents, call your old friends. That's one thing about the lockdown. I think we're, you know, getting on Zooms and talking to people we haven't talked to in a while. So I think if we spread that around, and I'd love to hear stories, maybe if this is okay, John and John. I love how I only have to remember one name, even though it's spelled different. But anyway, if people could write us or write to you and we could share the stories of kindness, maybe we could start a trend right here.
Absolutely. Why don't we start a kind bank? We can put it on.
I love it.
It's
Yes.
deposit kind stories. I think that's a great idea. If you have 5 minutes during the day, write one or come and read one.
We'll give away a scholarship to somebody who's being accepted.
Oh, wow.
Right.
What was that? I missed that, John. What was that?
A kind scholarship, you know. So let's give away a scholarship to one of our programs to somebody who has demonstrated long-term consistent kindness who qualifies.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Beautiful.
Brilliant. Okay.
Well, first of our kindness contributions. Okay. Kind man.
Wonderful.
But I had to talk about turkeys because there's a, you know, you can often mistake kindness, and the turkeys are a great example, you know, because turkeys love people. You know, they're bred, they're brought up in warm places, they're fed beautifully, and they just love and love and love people until Thanksgiving, by which time it's too late. So
well, I don't eat turkey.
So, you know, so there is this sort of kindness, it's a kind of fake kindness. It's not, you know, so the kindness we have to do for our kids and for the society and trying to not other people and build the world that we want to build, it's got to be one that at the end doesn't involve the destruction of another human being or creation. You're continually in the creative mode. You cannot ever stop that. And the scale of that gets bigger and bigger, because you can have small K kindness, which is kindness and empathy for the person right in front of you. And that, yes, give the beggar that thing. And that's really important. But then when you're running a company, you've got somebody who's got a problem here, you want to really help them. But if you help that person, you're breaking a system, or you're doing something that's keeping 50, 100, 2,000 people, you know, in a safe environment, employed environment. So there's a big K kindness, in my view, which is talking about big systems. How do you manage kindness in big systems, in a company, in a county, a country, or in a world? What does that mean? And how do you live in a way that the kindness matters? It's more than just an emotional schmaltz. And it's something that is powerfully activist, that makes a difference. That's what I'm fascinated by, you know?
Yeah, you know.
Sorry,
go ahead, John. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to kind of move us on to the next kind of topic linked to that. So if you want to comment, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that one of the chairmen I work with, his name is Doug Conan. He was the head of Campbell's Soup, and what he was the kindest chairman I have ever met. And he would meditate in his garden. There was no paper on his desk. I once took a photograph of him reading The Road Less Traveled. There's a chairman, right?
Right.
And the way he demonstrated kindness was he wrote people handwritten notes. And he said, thank you for today. And he had thousands of people working for him, and they weren't mimeograph notes. He wrote those notes. And, you know, another person that wrote notes was Indra Nooyi, the chairwoman of Pepsi. And I was privileged to work with her. And do you know who she wrote the notes to? The parents. She said, thank you for the beautiful job you did raising your child and letting me borrow her or him for this time. And that was amazingly kind. She was tough. You know, I've seen her like be really tough, but she was also good and kind. And it's two examples of high-powered people that were able to disseminate sweetness and kindness.
Yeah. So that was kind of links to the next topic. There are two things. One, John, you spoke about scale, and I would love to talk a little bit about that just now, because you head up a business school that kind of has a much bigger reach than, let's say, someone who doesn't run a big school in Africa. And Faith, you've got a massive audience, and that's kind of what spawned this conversation. Was we were having a conversation, the three of us, and what struck me was you both spoke about doing something good as your kind of plan. So you crystallized it. Faith, you mentioned that your advice to people was adopt a child if you could. I thought that was a wonderful crystallization of your intention. And John, you talk about the white space, this area in our lives in education, the white space of education, where we see children who begin school, how few of them actually finally get a degree, and the massive number of people who fall off the education kind of journey on that. We lose a lot of people. So I would love to talk a little bit about scale. And you started, John, talking about that, how we can scale kindness to a kind of a, let's say, provincial company or a multinational level. That's really important. And then after that, I thought we could just talk what you spoke about, this lady who was very tough but very kind. I would love to talk about the non-exclusive and mutually exclusive nature of those two things. It is necessary to be tough, often, in order for kindness to be effective. And we often forget that. It's all kittens and lovely, and there's some beautiful conversations happening in the chat, which are wonderful. But
Yes,
we have to address the hard nuts and bolts of how to make things happen out of kindness. So perhaps let's talk about that part first, tough but kind, and then we'll move on to the scale.
okay. I
I've
think
got the
people.
thunderstorm now
Okay, go
arriving
ahead,
on.
John. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay.
No, you go.
So how about the Jacinda Ardern thought? So there's a person that everyone recognizes as being kind, and she is kind. It's a small country. It's a country I love. But nonetheless, she's managing a country. She's managing COVID. What you've got is a woman leader who's leading that country. But there's something about New Zealand which is very, very direct. They don't put up with a lot of BS. They look at people. If you stick yourself up as being better than other people, they cut you down. It's a reaction to the class system of Britain. The emigres who started that, it created an even society. And so when you've got an even, open, tolerant society that is not trying to make everybody the same, kindness isn't making everybody the same. It's quite the opposite. Right. It's allowing massive diversity. How is it that somebody like Jacinda can be kind and yet still govern a country in the face of COVID, in the face of terrorist shootings in Christchurch, in the face of massive earthquakes, in the face of a whole load of issues between Maori and the Pakeha, the settlers there. So you can use kindness at scale, and you can be very tough and you can manage. How do you manage corruption in government or crime or murder without being, and still be kind? There's a humanity about it. That's really important. How do we achieve that? And so we can be kind on a scale. And how kind are we being to the planet and the people in it by allowing the pollution and the climate things? So when you think of kindness at that scale, we have to amplify this to a sense that we are changing the world, being kind but activist and being enormously strong and brave. I don't believe you can be kind without feeling some pain at the same time.
What I've noticed, to your point, is, and I love her, she brought her baby to the UN. Are you kidding? Talk about sweetness and kindness, if they would ever have me, I would move there immediately. I think you have to be tough on the work. That's what Indra was, tough on the work and kind to the person that made the work. And I think that's the difference. And somebody asked on this chat, by the way, you have a very beautiful chat line here. You should really publish it. It's wonderful. But somebody said, how do you not make people, feel like they're being vulnerable if they're being kind? And you know what? I just want to strip away that idea of vulnerability is so bad. What's so bad? So what? You're vulnerable. Okay, you get hurt. You're human. So you're maybe kind to the wrong person, and then you're vulnerable, and maybe they weren't kind back, or they didn't deserve it. Maybe, maybe. So what? I don't know. I shouldn't talk. I mean, I don't know. I don't like being vulnerable because it's very, very kind of, it feels personally dangerous. But I am vulnerable. So, what can I do? talk about kindness. I mean, there's all kinds. I always tell my kids, I hope I don't get them shot someday. Get in the way. Get in the way. So we'll be at like a big supermarket, like we have a Costco here or whatever, and I hear this baby crying. I don't know. This must come from my childhood somewhere. And my kids go, please, no, mommy, no, 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 no. And I go over there to the baby and I go, and the mother is like ignoring it or whatever, or, and I go, I introduce myself as a pediatrician because I don't want them to get mad at me and go, hello, I'm a pediatrician. I just turn the carriage toward you and look at the baby because I think unheeded cries create like a crust around your heart. And I think people should pay attention to people who are crying and don't call it an act. Oh, so dramatic. I hear a lot of dads say that actually about their boys and they're being dramatic. They're not being dramatic. They're crying from their heart, Yeah. So I think you should encourage kindness and encourage vulnerability, reward vulnerability.
Yeah. I mean,
I remember you as a comedian, John, telling a story about a kid having a tantrum in a shop and a parent's reaction. That's such a beautiful story. Why don't you say it?
well, it's a simple reaction, and it's interesting. I'll relate to exactly what Beth just said now, because I think Black Lives Matter was an unheeded cry by many people. It was met by a great deal of, all lives matter, which to me is everybody in the room just start crying out of a reaction to someone crying. It was a really dumb reaction. But so the idea of the kid in the supermarket is that your child starts crying often towards the end of the supermarket trip, often when you're in the queue to pay. They have a tantrum. And most parents will meet that tantrum with either violence by beating the kid or removing them. Well, that happens, and they rebuke their child. They bribe them with goodies, give them sugar, or they take them to the car. And none of those are the right answer at all. What they're really curing is their own sense of insecurity because other adults might judge them as being unable to control a smaller human being, which is a really caveman kind of need reaction to your own child, who that person will tell at a dinner party will say, I really love my kids. Well, no, you won't, because you use violence or bribery or sort of psychological warfare on them when you outplay it. The real answer, if you ask a child psychologist, is to pick the child up and hold them, and they will fight you for a while, but eventually they will go quiet and they'll do whatever you want, because the truth is they're totally aware of the fact that they've lost control of their emotion. And they are humiliated by losing control in front of all these strangers. And strangely, they left their house on total high alert because you taught them that strangers are bad. So we teach children xenophobia because we're too lazy to manage risk with our children at an early age. We teach them all strangers are bad. And statistically, very few strangers actually want to harm your child. But they grow up afraid of the other. Back to John's point, we enforce othering at a young age. It's vital. It's life and death, and it's false. And then we beat them when they react with that in the supermarket. It's a very hard to grow up.
Nobody should beat a child. I mean, if anybody hits a child, they should be absolutely arrested. It's disgusting. I'll tell you a story that will never make you look at crying the same way. In the Chinese orphanages, the children don't cry. So all these people that think it's good that kids, shouldn't cry, why don't babies cry? Because they learn that nobody will come. And it's the silent orphanages full of infants. So let your babies cry, pick them up and love them more for crying. And I just put in a commercial here. If everybody just adopted or fostered or fed one child, just one, this world would be a different place. So just get a baby. Get a kid. There are plenty of them out there. Foster one, feed one, hold one. And that's my mission.
Yeah. I think that's so interesting, John, because we're in South Africa. What Faith is talking about is so beautiful. But we're in South Africa. A lot of people here have either immigrant house helps or people helping in their house. People worry about, well, you're spoiled, aren't you? But these people have absolutely no jobs. But I can absolutely guarantee, looking at the list here, that the numbers of the people here will be silently supporting families, putting children through school, of these people helping, sending money to Zimbabwe or whatever it is, or to the country areas to help support, because there is a natural kindness going on and people don't talk about it. There's one thing I just like to explore. It's a link between what I would call kindness and action. And I was listening to Ted's countdown the other day, which was talk about 2030 countdown to 50% emissions. And there was this Buddhist monk from Plum Village outside Paris talking about how when he was a monk in Vietnam, his teacher was listening. They were all in retreat. There was a question about cocooning earlier. They were cocooning in their sort of temple, but they could hear the bombs in the village. And because they had, in the meditation, they'd had to go through so much. Meditation is switching off. You really got to understand your own problem. So because they'd understood their own suffering through meditation, they were very much in tune with their feelings as well. And they could hear the bombs and they could feel the pain almost of the villagers. And they couldn't help themselves but to get up and go and help. And his story was that if you're meditating, if you're compassionate, it forces action. It doesn't force inaction, because the empathy you have for people forces you to go and help, whatever the cost to you. And I think that is probably the most powerful human dynamic around kindness. It's not something you switch off and just turn on like a Hallmark card. It's something really deep and fundamental about being human.
Yes.
So that's a really good point. Perhaps you spoke a little bit about it, perhaps the biological reaction of the human body to kindness. We talk a lot about kindness as being an act for someone else who's less fortunate. But maybe we should just talk about the absolutely positive effect on the person being kind. Because I think that's a really misunderstood thing. Often it's seen that if we are charitable or kind, we're in some way caving or, giving something away. And I talk about this specifically in a South African context where we must face the issue of land reparation. It must happen. And this is not even a kindness, it's a justice. But the effect of being kind is good for let's call it the kind all, as opposed to the kindee only,
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I totally agree. I think you get more than you give always if you're kind. And I saw one of the chats and things like that have happened to me too. She was kind to somebody, or he was, they stole his car. I once had somebody help me with my kids, and I took them to this market and I bought them all kinds of clothes. I mean, really hundreds of dollars of clothes for their family and everything. And then I later found out that they returned everything and got the money, Yes, so what? So what? You give somebody money. I hear people say, I'm not going to give them money because they're going to drink it away or use it for drugs. If that's your pleasure, I'm not in control after I dispense the kindness. I'm just, I get the lift, I get the boost. And if you don't want to use it in the way I think you should use it, well, you don't get to do that. You don't get to rule that. So if you look at this into the faces of monks, you brought up that, or people that are professionally kind, not all of them, but people from religious orders, there is a light there in a glow. And I think that's what you get back.
Yeah, I think we don't understand the deeply internalized self-work you do by being kind. It's deep self-development. John, I wanted to get back to scale, because what do we do? What does an educator do going forward in the world to take the idea of kindness from a meme, from a feel-good, and industrially replicate the practice of kindness as an educator? How can we pull that off?
I can think of a number of ways, but one hypothesis is that education educates us. It's like Ken Robinson talked, strip mines our mind for a very narrow set of assets. And in that process, we become narrow but very effective, and efficient, very targeted. And if the hypothesis is that education often damages people in some ways, then the first thing might be to undamage them. And because we're linear and rational quite often, and we believe in KPIs and targets and all good stuff, the mind needs some sort of rational hook. We teach people system thinking, and we give them a rational way to understand complex situations. And during that, they have to understand that you can't make sense of this problem of life without seeing it from other people's point of view. I'm brought up in a particular sort of way. You can tell I'm British by origin. Faith is a New Yorker, American, fantastic, creative. You are Joburg, creative, highly intellectual. Mamo, I see there, come from a totally different background. I can't see what you can see. I can never see what Faith can see. I can't see Mamo's point of view, being brought up in South Africa. How can I access that? In order for me to understand that, I've got to see it from other people. You are my gift. Faith is my gift. You know, Mamo's my gift. If I can see the world through her eyes, I can see the picture bigger, much more than I can see it in my narrow perception. And then I'll have to unhook some of my perceptions. And so we teach people to do that. And halfway through the process, which seems rational, it suddenly said, oh my goodness, I can't see truth without seeing it through others' eyes. And the moment you get that, you realize you have to have empathy, because the moment you cut out somebody else because you don't like the way they think, you're cutting out part of the truth and the complexity of the situation. And if you're running a business, you can never be really successful, because you need to see the complexity of the situation and respond to it. And so that's one way. The other way we do is we understand that people are damaged, and we spend a lot of time trying to build people's confidence, because we believe that people self-heal really, really well once they're put in an environment that's supportive. And it's emotional. And the thing about us, we're not trying to do good. We're curing ourselves. And in our world, if you're not learning faster than the people you're so-called educating, you're not educating. And so it becomes this wonderful journey of discovery, and it creates a dynamic. And we don't believe in competitive advantage. We'd like to give away everything we do. We started a family-friendly MBA because we didn't think that studying MBAs was very good for families and kids. What sort of educators are creating education that damages relationships and kids? We can do better. So we're trying to create a competitive advantage that everybody will steal to make families have a better time while they're doing MBAs. You know, it's that sort of things that we like to play with, you know?
Yeah. Please steal our innovation and use it.
Yes,
That's great. That's great. It was a similar thing. I met with the Mandela Foundation, who were building libraries in containers and stocking them with books, and then dropping them in locations at schools that didn't have libraries. And when I spoke to the founder of this initiative, he said, we really hope that the kids steal the books. So I said, oh, he said, yeah, because if they steal them, it means they want to read them. And so let them steal the books, take them home and read them, steal them, and we'll put more in. We'll get more books. We would love you to steal our books. And I just thought it was such a wonderful approach to, you know, we have this idea that books become sacred. You know, there's this idea that if you mistreat a book, somehow you've been some kind of savage. Whereas I thought the idea of encouraging the theft of knowledge was so obvious. And yet we let our sort of own ethics and moral kind of lenses get in the way. And we've missed the point, right? Why keep the books locked in the library? It's a really dumb place for a book to be. Rather let it be being read by a thief. What a great place for a book. So it's interesting when you reframe education with the right outcome in mind, how we can really innovate. Faith, are you telling lots of business leaders about kindness going forward, and what's the reaction been?
You know, back to the original talk, you know, what you said to open, I'm finding that I've talked to more company leaders in this time, I guess because they're not traveling or some other stuff. And I think that kindness is coming over them. I think that they, like what John said, they got so scared. You know, maybe they lost a friend, and they're so grateful that they're not sick. And the plane has flattened out, you know, and I think they're a little bit lonely, and they can't be. Hierarchy is gone, by the way, in COVID, in business. How much can you yell at somebody while everybody's watching on a Zoom? You know, I mean, you can't crush them. I think people talk about kindness. You know, they've made a study, I think you probably know this, that reviews, which are horrible, it's just a moment of mass sadism, I believe, in corporate America, at least here. Review, what does review mean? It means you get to tell them how horrible they're doing, but you frame it in opportunity, you know, and you know, I think they've learned that in the moment feedback is much better. But I think a lot of these business leaders are becoming more kind, and I'm seeing a lot of them retire. They're doing, I think we're all doing this, a little I think Corinne and I might call, well, at least a working title for the album is The Future in Review. So I think they're reviewing their past and going like, no, I don't know. And then they're looking at their future in review and they're going, is this really what I want to be doing? A lot of them can afford not to do it. And I've seen a lot of softening in these leaders in this time. So to your point, maybe it took this.
Thank you so much, both of you, for your time.
Thank you. It was wonderful
to take time out of a busy day and just talk about kindness. What a cool thing, and come out with some, I think, some new brains who've been kind of working on the problem for us in the chat bar, which is brilliant.
Give yourself a hug.
Thank you, Faye. Thank you so much. It was wonderful seeing you again. Let's keep connecting. Yes.
Absolutely.
And John, thank you very much, and thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Lots of love and kindness to you guys. I love you all, and Carmen, and all of South Africa.
So there we go. That was the conversation, and I hope you liked it. I tried to extract from it the things that we felt were the best parts of the chat. Bit of nimble editing. It was great, and somehow I felt like John and Faith were going to just keep talking forever. I'm going to give you a quick summary of what I found in the chat, because I feel that there's at least the basis for one master's thesis in what you've come up with. So what we'd like to do now is we'd like to invite you all to join the panel. So we're going to have the biggest panel in the world. If I can ask you for a couple of things, keep your mic off, because with 56 or 59 of us on the panel, it can get very noisy with a tiny bit of background noise times 59. So as you're invited onto the panel, let's switch your mic off. I will allow you a chance to talk. We'll have a simple system. We'll figure it out. We'll build a little community. We'll get some rules going. That's going to be fairly easy. But what I did was in the interim, while you all get brought onto the panel, this is starting to look like a much better room than it was before. There were just three of us and it was a bit weird. If you want to put your camera on, go ahead. That'd be great. Always good to see people. If you're not up to having your camera on, I get it. That's fine as well. Don't feel under pressure. But it's always good to see people. And you can just leave your mic on mute until we give you a chance to have a talk. I just want to say the quality of the chat's very good in the chat room. And by that, what I mean is we haven't done the standard social platform, South African thing where we set up, a dialectic discussion and then we want to win, and form camps. I think what's going on is supportive, expansive, it's divergent thinking. And what's happened is it started to converge. It's beautiful to watch human beings work in a group. So I'm obsessed with teaching now. I love it because I watch human brains work. Not all the answers come from the content. That's another thing I just want to mention to you. The majority of what we're going to talk about now is from the chat. Of course, yes, John and Faith, clever people, that's great. But something John always says that deeply inspires me, they both have ordinary human minds. And an ordinary human mind is a brilliant gift. So it's not about looking for extraordinary minds. It's about accepting that we all have an ordinary human mind. And what I mean by that is if you look at our brains, scientifically, we're all pretty much the same. It's not like Einstein had like a bucky on the back of his shoulders with an extra brain. We all have what's called an ordinary human mind. There's very, very few differences between our brains. It's how we use them. And so what I'm just watching here is this incredible conversation. It's clear, it's concise, there's no ego involved. It's just inquiring and asking and sharing, and that's fantastic. So just a couple of things I picked up, and then I'm going to go to the chat and I'll check for hands that are up. The number one, very early on in the conversation, was about kindness being contagious. And it just struck me that perhaps kindness is a virus we could really use. So why do we only think of viruses as bad things? Imagine a virus that would infect us with kindness. That would be a very cool thing to try and hack. Another thing that came up early was, is kindness material? In other words, if I don't have to give. But that's a really interesting concept. Is it about a material thing, or is it time, or is it care, or is it focus? Is it a moment of listening? So we mustn't think of kindness. We can. Sometimes that's what someone needs, right? And we don't have it. But perhaps if you don't have that, you can give something else that you do have. And that came up. It also became very clear throughout the conversation, kindness is more than individual acts. It's a practice. And once you start to talk about a practice, it takes on a whole new shape. It's a way of being. That's why monks are focused and they're in a monastery, because they're trying really hard to live a certain way in a certain pattern. Perhaps it's something we could look at as a pattern rather than judging each individual act. Because if you do that, if you score, and someone mentioned that in the chat, if I feel the impulse to do something kind and I resist or I don't do it, am I a bad person? I'm just paraphrasing, but I think
Jermaine, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here, Graham. I'm just quickly reaching out to John. I think may have been frozen for a little while.
sorry about that. You jump off and then you come back on because you have a backup and it quickly kicks in. So I'm not sure where my audio died. It would have died a little before I knew, because then my picture goes. That's how it normally goes. But if you perform a practice of kindness in your life, then interestingly, you start to benefit as the kind-or as opposed to the kindee all the time. There was a lot of comment, Bolelwa particularly, you were talking a bit about reaction and perception. And that's a very interesting area of what is the role of having an ego in a kind environment. And that's not something I'm judging. I'm not saying ego is something good or bad. It simply exists. What I'm asking is whether anyone here has got comments on what how do you think the ego could interact with kindness? And then, of course, the perception of kindness, a very interesting comment from Jeanette. And I think earlier on as well, and there was a comment, and I will find your name, but you mentioned about, I'm really paraphrasing here, but you spoke about being betrayed, and you spoke about, how it's difficult sometimes to perceive kindness. I think, Jeanette, you also mentioned a little bit about if you're raised to believe you don't just get stuff. Then when someone is kind to you, you can almost see it as a hostile act or an undermining act, and that goes back to ego. So those are basically the very big themes that we were kind of extracted there. That doesn't have to be the only thing we talk about now, just some things that I thought. Alex says, a silly comment that will drop the average quality of the chat that John just referred to, but I can't help saying that it's cool and confusing that it seems to me that John was wearing the same top in the replay, but different glasses. You're very perceptive, Alex. It's so funny. I didn't plan to, actually, but I just love this top. And when I saw the video earlier, I was like, oh, look, I haven't changed, but I have changed glasses. So I wouldn't commit a crime anywhere near you, because I think you will be able to spot all the details. So well done, Alex. Good job. So now what I'm going to do is I'd like to open it up. Really great chat coming. And you'll notice I'm not talking about what John and Faith had to say. Those are the triggers. That's the great way to teach. You use the references and the knowledge and the experts, if you will, only to trigger the students, because that ordinary mind that you've got sitting on your beautiful shoulders, that's what we want to fire up. We don't want to all go, oh, she's brilliant. We know Faith is good. We get that, right? She knows she's good. John's a dean. I mean, he's a very smart strategy guy. Brilliant. What we're really looking for is the firing inside, where you come at this material from and what you have to contribute, because that's a creation of knowledge tonight that is not being replicated anywhere in the world ever. And what I notice is a lot of people are just contributing. We're all asking open-ended questions rather than going, you know what, because I call that the braai. And the braai is a terrible place for me, not only as a vegan, and I really, you can braai vegetables, but going there is difficult, because then I've got to get into a conversation about, why are you a vegetarian? Why are you a vegan? And like, I didn't ask you, why are you a male? Why did you wear those pants? Like, why can't it just be lunch? And why can't it just be a decision instead of a debate? And I'm just not seeing that here, which is amazing. So what I want to do is I want to see if there are any hands up. Is there anybody who would like to say something live? And if not, what I would love to do is just ask a couple of people to expand on the ideas that they've had in the chat. I have to tell you, JC Matimbi, JC, I feel that if you wrote a book on philosophy, I would probably buy that book, pre-order it before it was written. I just love where your head's going. It's fantastic. You know, and I see a lot of agreement on culture and perception, and we're asking questions like, but how can I be kind when I come from, or when I don't, or when I did? And that's interesting because it shows that people are keen to try and get over those hurdles. You know, no one's going, you know, I didn't have that when I grew up. And the truth is, in South Africa, we have many, many people who would be totally justified in being angry, being bitter, and being betrayed, you know, feeling injustice. I feel we would be doing a disservice to people by just assuming, you know, everyone's kind. I have this thing I used to do in a show where I literally saw a lady in Woolworths with a full trolley, you know, and she was actually saying out loud in that way where some people assume that because you look a bit like them, you're in their club. And I'm very much not in anyone's club. I'm my own club, and I'm only one member. And I'm welcome to listen to your club, but I don't assume that I'm in yours. She just looked around and she said, you know, I don't know how these people just assume that we're privileged. Lady, you're in Woolworths. I mean, you know, your trolley, cost of your trolley is a small down payment on a house. So it's too late. You're privileged. You're guilty. So it's interesting. So I'm not seeing a lot of that here, and that's great. So, and then Kenneth, thank you, Kenneth. Alex pulled the words right out of your mouth. You're wondering about the top as well. I just want to ask, is there anyone who wants to give me a hand up? And you know where that hand is. It's down the bottom of your toolbar. You'll just see raise hand. If you click on that, I will see your hand pop up, and I'll be able we can switch on your mic, and you can ask us a question, or you can add, or anything like that. So that's the first thing. Is there anybody who wants to do that? Just a fresh idea, or I'll go back. I saw a hand, it flashed, and then it flashed off. I think someone panicked when they saw their hand up. They were like, no, get it down. Okay, I'm going to keep an eye out. That's fine. What I'm also going to do. Oh, very good. Bulelua, hi.
Hi, how are you, John?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Just a quick one.
Yeah.
The whole issue of the act of kindness, for example, I'm a strong believer in it because of my spiritual convictions. But on the other hand, it's so difficult to just appreciate it because there is just the whole issue, for example, just before elections, you must watch how political parties will be demonstrating acts of kindness to lure people into voting for them. And yet after that, they do not live all the promises. So it is just a very difficult part to truly appreciate it as it ought to be. Yeah.
I loved your comment, and I'll tell you why I love it is because now we must become elevated in our definition of kindness, because I totally agree. And what you just described wasn't an act of kindness, it was a bribe.
Yes, completely.
Yeah.
And then the whole issue, sorry, John, is just the authenticity. How do you then get, I mean, there has to be authentic kindness than just kindness. Do you get me? Exactly.
Absolutely. So may I ask you a question? So for example, and I'm really asking for your thoughts, like let's say we were going to go and try and win an election. How would you be kind to people in South Africa as opposed to the way that you see it being practiced now, the way you perceive it?
Firstly, you have had to demonstrate it by how you treated them. And it's just so sad because obviously there is the whole issue of taking advantage of the most disadvantaged people who will appreciate a 500 Rand or a 300 Rand just before elections. And yet there has been a 5-year term of you having not demonstrated the real care for those people and the true ability to uplift them up. Do you understand?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Then, for me, it has to be, it's more than just acts. You have to live it.
Right. I love what you just said. I think that's brilliant. I think that, yes, I think kindness would be showing true care for people. I'm just extracting from what you said. And also kindness, I think you mentioned, was a commitment. to those people, their best interests, I suppose. Wow.
100%.
Okay, well, when
Because
you run for office, let us know.
I'm not
We are
in
behind
politics
you.
at all.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for that. I think, Taryn, you are next. This brilliant software, it stacks everyone in the queue. So, Taryn, I believe you've got your hand up. Hi, I think you're on mute.
Hi, there we go.
Hi.
Thank you for a lovely, lovely conversation. So many beautiful souls, which is just awesome. I so agree with Bulelwa is that the minute we are kind with an expectation of something back, it's no longer kind. It's, as you say, a manipulation or a bribe. My question or my thoughts, thing that's going through my mind, is how we kind to those that don't deserve it. So to those that have been hurt or those that have, we were talking about the children and the parents, is how do we get kind to the parents that are clearly, hurt people? How do we, I really believe kindness can heal with a sense of empathy and love and compassion when we can separate the behavior from the human being that thinks that's the only way that they can respond to life. So it seemed to me through the conversation, there was a lot of kindness for those that are the victims in life. But I'm curious how we're kind to the bully or the CEO that's overwhelmed, or to the guy in jail, or somebody who's really hasn't explored something different. So that's been the thought that's going on in my mind, is that how do we make kindness unconditional and not only offered to those that are downtrodden, but to anyone who's hurting.
So, Taryn, I absolutely love what you just said. I mean, there's a couple of things I want to refer to, but the first one is, I think John spoke about the courage of kindness, and I think you're absolutely right. A lot of people in this evening have, in a very gentle way, hinted at being betrayed or hurt in the past and distrustful. It takes enormous courage to go back and potentially get hurt again. And that's interesting. Grace said earlier, perhaps cynicism of the world or of personal experience makes it difficult to be kind to others if kindness hasn't been shown to you much in your life. How do you give kindness or be kind? And I just reminded Grace that her name is actually the definition of that. Is to find that ability, and that ties to, I'm sure, Bulelwa, your kind of spiritual framework. You see, there's this kind of belief that if you are weak, by giving people what they ask for, and the truth is, we're an acquisitive creature. We are an ape that made it to the top of a list of about 10 different great apes. And we did it by taking more than anyone else. We took, and if you look at the history of our success since we walked the planet, it's basically mass murder is how we got to where we are. And we've taken, but now we've evolved to a place where we are another kind of animal, potentially another kind of animal, where we actually look after the weak and we treasure the different, and it's a new level of sophistication. And so I love what you've said, and I think it's a courage to, I know you're going to do it. You may take advantage of me again, but I'm coming anyway. And I'm not a religious person, but I have read many of the religious books, and that seems to me a very kind of a Jesus-like approach.
Yes.
I always said to my mum, who is very religious, I said, like, wow, mum, it's like the Old Testament. It's like the dad was quite tough, and then the son was kind of this cool guy, sandals, kaftan, friends. And he's like, whoa, dad, whoa, easy on the brimstone. Can we just, how about we love each other? So I quite like that kind of angle of it. And it feels to me like there's something very powerful about being very brave in your kindness. And is it naive?
I think that there's a role leadership can play in that. So I don't know, there's a great book called The Healing Organization. I can't remember who the author is off the top of my head. And there's a beautiful story about how their philosophy for hiring people is there's no process to review you. You just put your name on a list and then they hire you. And so they tend to hire ex-convicts the most, because the only place ex-convicts can give a job. And they invest all the money they would have used in screening you in supporting your healing. And they have this amazing organization that's grown with 60% of the employees being ex-convicts, because they were shown grace, they were shown kindness, they were given love and support rather than judgment. And I just wonder if more organizations, if more of us took that philosophy into the way we, rather than screening and judging and holding you for the acts of your past, to come from a place of, I'll give you a chance, I'll hold you accountable, you have to show up. Don't screw with me, but let's try. Just for me, there's a depth to kindness that's beyond paying for somebody's groceries. That's really changing something. So that's my thoughts.
What a superb contribution. Thank you, Taryn. I've got a list. So let me go to the next. So it's going to be Linda, Sepasile, Chanel, and then Daniel. So let's go to Linda. Linda, tell us what you have to say.
Sawubona, John, and good evening to everybody. I will deliberately keep my camera off. I think this is a better visual.
You also have cool glasses.
Thank you. There's a few things that resonated with me, and I think there's a very interesting piece around, to Taryn's point, around how do you recognize in the moment how to self-correct before you become unkind. I almost want to shift the needle around, yes, we can be kind, but how do you recognize it? How do we build tools within our minds, in our presence, who we are, to say, you know what, I'm in the situation now, and if I don't course correct, I am going to come across unkind. And I think the second piece is also around, how do you then, with those triggers, be okay with extending a kindness that you yourself may have never received, but still understand that it is the appropriate kindness in the moment to give. And lastly, the third piece is around, how do you make sure that your wellness as an individual, your vessel, remains full so that you can continue to pour into others? So I'm really interested in the collective's view around those three principles.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's a nice master's thesis right there. So what I'll do is, Linda, I'm going to ask everyone who resonates with what you said to put some ideas in the chat. So let's see what comes out of those three. You have 3 questions in your assignment, everyone. We'd love to read your answers. So let's see what everyone has to say. Let's talk to, thank you, Linda. That was beautiful. Sipeshile. No, it's not Sipeshile. It's Sipesihle. Hi.
Yes. Thank you, John. It's Pesihle. It's actually a silent I.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank everyone. Cool. I think Linda's point is also a question around that kindness is innate, right? And I think unkindness is taught. So how do we then, as a society, unlearn the unkindness that we've been taught? How do we get to a point, particularly with, I'll call it a pandemic, with the current scourge of gender-based violence?
We're struggling to hear you. Sorry. There's something, I think we were struggling. Let's try again.
Can you hear me a bit better now?
I can hear you much better. You're saying such cool stuff. I just want to make sure we get it.
Okay, cool. Thanks, John. So I was just saying that I think for me, the pertinent question then is, how do we, because I believe that kindness is innate and unkindness is taught, right? So how do we then unlearn the unkindness that we've been taught because of various social structures that we grew up within? And particularly within the GBV scourge that we're currently experiencing as a country, how do we become kind in such circumstances or in such a time, you know? So for me, it would really be interesting to see perhaps, or to be given tools as to how do we as a society unlearn the unkindness and relearn what we were born with, which is the kindness.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's amazing. I think you're absolutely right. It's almost like evolution has taught us to teach our children to be less kind in the event that we may give away more than we should or share. And you know, I run the risk of dropping a, you know, cat amongst pigeons now, but I would say, and I'll say it because I'm 47 and, you know, I have a voice, but but I feel that that spirit has been holding back reconciliation in South Africa quite badly. I feel like there was a big hand extended early on by Black people to say, look, okay, you say you're going to change. It's like an abusive relationship. You say you're going to change. And there's a bit of a thing, and there's research to back this up. I'm not just making it up, but there is research in the corporate world for what they call white apathy. And there's a danger of and I also have to acknowledge that as much as it's a fault, it's also deeply programmed. And so it's a learned behavior, as you say. So there is a sense of unlearning. And I think we all have to unlearn distrust. We have to unlearn acquisition. We have to unlearn, we have to relearn equity. Somebody mentioned Ubuntu. I know it often gets sort of rolled out as a sort of heal all. It is a brilliant idea. I mean, the philosophy of Ubuntu is deeply rooted in, almost like kindness as a way to sustain us and get us through. Sharing at the bottom of the pyramid. There are lots of ways of describing it. There's a law of Yanta in the Nordics, where you are not special. We are something, you are not. And it's this constant reminder. So to your point, I think there are many ways to seek the kind of tools that will allow you to do that. And in the chat earlier, lots of talk about clarity as a form of kindness. And maybe, I'm just going to call you Spee because it's easier and for me. And perhaps we need to think about clarity, and just going back to Bolelwa about, exactly what is an act of kindness? What's the definition? So I think we need to all think about the clarity around kindness would be a good start. But I, maybe you want to invite everyone in this chat to your house for a cup of tea, and we could maybe figure it out for you. We could help. So thank you for those comments. They're really good. Chanel, I believe you were next.
Thanks, John. This conversation has sort of had me thinking about my own personal journey to kindness, and I always see the world as, well, where the world is now is more about what can I get out of it. The sense of I must come first before anyone else is where I think a lot of unkindness comes in, because you don't think about the consequences of how your actions or what you're trying to achieve will affect others, because really you're the only person that matters. And I like the phrase that Linda used, that course correct. I think we as a society need to course correct that sense of what can I get out of this to how can I benefit the world. And I reflect on my own personal journey. It wasn't until I started being kind to myself that I started to feel like people were kinder to me, and also I started to see more kindness in the world. And I had to make certain changes in my own life to get to that place of kindness. And every day now I'm a lot happier, I'm a lot nicer to myself, even in tough moments. And that's really where I think we've gotten it wrong as a world is, we're thinking so much about ourselves that we don't think about, what act of kindness can I give to myself that could have a ripple effect or resonate with someone else. And that's, you'll find that that's how kindness becomes catching, it becomes contagious, but it does start with self. But how you view yourself, how you speak to yourself will then generate better behavior. And I actually saw something the other day. We say to kids very often when they're younger, I'm so proud of you. So we teach them to think outside of themselves. We don't ask them, how do you feel about what you've done? We don't get them to think about the kindness within themselves. And I think it's an interesting journey to go on. And I found it interesting for myself, at least. It's an interesting journey to go on to try and get to that place of kindness, and trying to then translate that into future generations, because I don't think we'll solve it in this generation, unfortunately. But it is work that would need to be done by everyone going forward.
I'm just writing down what you were saying. I couldn't agree with you more. I think a lot of what you just said now is a perfect way to go back to what Linda was asking. I think, Chanel, what a self-aware way to approach kindness. It's because you're talking about self-knowledge, which I think self-awareness is the beginning of almost everything. I think you speak about kindness to self. as a practice in how to judge or perceive kindness to others. And you know, that's a very powerful, you know, Linda was asking, how do we start? Well, I mean, sorry, Spee. And, you know, I think you've given her the answer. So that's brilliant. Thank you for that. Daniel, I believe you're next.
Thanks.
There you are. Hi.
Congratulations on your career change. I hope it's very profitable.
I don't know about profitable, but it feels better.
Now, I've got basically three things that I wanted to talk about. The one thing is, I spoke to a friend that's a girl a while ago, and she said, if I want to go into business, I'll never make it because I'm not a player, and I don't scheme enough. So it's quite heartening to know that kindness will also sometimes help you in business. So yeah. And the second thing is, not everyone is religious. I know in this crowd also, not everyone is religious, but religion has a good method of binding societies and organizing societies. And the wisdom that we can learn from religion sometimes help in a lot of areas in life. And for instance, if you look at Jesus's golden rule and Confucius's golden rule, it says basically treat others as you would like to be treated yourself. So, and also, I don't know the Quran that well. I think that kindness is also a very, very big theme in the Quran and in other religions. But I think it's like a distilled wisdom that we can use to bind society and to grow.
Yeah.
And the third thing is, if you look at South Africa, kindness in South Africa, there's a bit of a problem because of the culture deficiencies that we have. And it starts with the family. And I know that there's a statistic that said that more than 60% of Black children grow up without a father. So it's a very worrying situation. And you have to start like rearing your children with the correct values. And that's something we have to look at. Thanks.
Cool, Daniel, thank you. Yeah, on your first thing about religions being useful, absolutely. I mean, and throughout history, we've seen great social cohesion come from any framework that bonds people. Like any framework, it has the ability to corrupt because it concentrates power and wealth. And so often what I find is what the individual does with the framework. One of my best friends, a very charismatic a Christian lady who's just wonderful and kind of we would never have met in the social world, but we teach together now, and she's a doctor in her field. She's super amazing. And I'm so clearly not going to be going to her church on a Sunday. I mean, I don't know if it's clear, but I wouldn't. But however, what she teaches when we teach together, we teach dissonance. And it's very interesting because she begins as the senior. She's the academic senior. And she explains how when she first watched me give a lecture, she was deeply offended by my appearance and my history as a very rude comedian. And she couldn't believe that I was being allowed to lecture at this other business. It wasn't actually Henley, it was somewhere else. And she spent the first 20 minutes like angry and like inside she was having a fight with her own, stuff. And then eventually she realized that she actually liked what I was saying. And then she said, the next thing I realized was that she was the problem. And the way that she was treating her framework, her belief system, was limiting her. So she made the decision to put that aside and actually just listen. And the way I come into that conversation with her in the classroom is I say, well, what's interesting is I'm someone who doesn't have a belief system. I'm an atheist, but when I hear my friend talk about the growth that she can do within that framework, I have nothing but admiration for how she thrives in that framework. So why would I undermine her, belief in that framework? It doesn't make any sense. But also, as an atheist friend to a Christian, I really score because she treats me wonderfully, because she's going to go to heaven. I'm not. yet I get treated better because she believes in heaven. What a bonus. So why would I undermine her belief in that framework? So that's a good example of your idea on frameworks. Exactly right. A lot of people get solace. They get kind of inspiration. They get succor when they're struggling from the framework.
Can I just say something else quickly? I read an article about 10 years ago from Brett Shuttleworth, the model. He's modeling, he's a South African, but he's modeling in America. He did a while ago. I think he's back in South Africa now. He promoted the idea of egolessness. You were talking about the ego getting in the way of kindness. He said egolessness helped him in his career a lot. And also, some people can maybe check out Sartre's book on transcendence of the ego.
That's a good way to end, Daniel. It's a good book. Absolutely. So and that's why I always talk about the ego as, some belief systems will tell you that you've got to kill your ego. You've got to end it and transcend. I just know that it's so present. It's such a real thing in everyone's life to just say it's over. It's a life's work. So, but yes, I agree. Go and read that book. It's a very, very good idea. I can't wait to read some of the books that some of these people should be writing that we've met tonight. I'm very aware of the time. I know we've got to the end of our hour and a half. I would ask you, please, if it's okay with you all, that I will send you an email. And what I'll do is we'll save this chat for you as a sort of a keepsake of what was discussed here tonight. And I'm just reading here. How can we change the mindset so that vulnerability is not seen as an indicator of weakness of character, but rather that vulnerability is an indicator of authenticity? Ilham, it's such a good question. And I think it's one of the missions of people like Jacinda Ardern, who's trying to create that environment where she'll take her baby with her to the United Nations because she's a mother and that's what she has. She's trying to be authentic to her situation. And I think there are other great leaders, and I don't want to just isolate Jacinda Ardern. It's just that at the moment I'm working on a leadership kind of exploration, and she's one of the kind of case studies. But absolutely, it's a very good point, Ilham. I think it begins with all of us. It's a movement. That's why Black Lives Matter is so terribly important, because it is a cry and it needs to be heard. You cannot answer Black Lives Matter with all lives matter. That's not even understanding what's being said. It's such a bad reaction. And the best description I ever heard is, when a house on your street is on fire and the fire engine come and you stand outside your house and you go, oh, what about my house? It's not on fire. So I think there's a lot of hysteria and there's a lot of populism and there's a lot of a polarization in the world right now, because bad power is kind of seem to be winning for a while. We seem to get bursts of hope. I'm sure many of you are watching this unfolding Zondo Commission with interest, at least, that my partner often tells me that nothing's going on, it's a waste of money. And then I've got to kind of calm her down and say, well, if you look at the big, ugly dirtiness of politics generally, you might see that in the grand timescale, things seem to be, I don't know, I'm mildly optimistic, but anyway, so I think, Ilham, it's about practice. If we practice it, we spoke about the Bible. Daniel briefly mentioned the Quran, which speaks a lot about how to treat your fellow human. And there's a huge amount of stuff in there about like nuts and bolts stuff, how to treat, that I haven't read in many of the other books. So that's worth checking out. I think all of those frameworks have got quite a lot of quite good tools in them. They also all have a history of, becoming something else. Because they're a concentration of power, and that's just the thing that humans do, is when we get a lot of power, a lot of celebrities do it. I just watched the really, really horrific documentary about R. Kelly, and just, wow, man, the warped use of power, it's distorted. So we all have to be careful of that. And perhaps to answer your question, Ilham, is maybe we all need to think about what are our sources of absolute power, and are we brave enough to let go of them? Can we explore that? Where do we demonstrate absolute power in our lives? And is that healthy? Because a lot of us are taught win, be competitive, dominate. Is that the way forward in a world that has finite resources? don't know. Maybe that's what you want to do, build a company, make a lot of money and burn out in a big exit strategy. I don't know. That's entirely up to you, but it's interesting. So I'd like to send you all an email of tonight's conversation. I'm going to explore with a very good graphics harvester if she would look at the chat and give us a graphic. And if I can, I'll get that to you on the same email. So I hope you don't mind if I email you back. I have to tell you, as someone who's at Henley, all of what's happening tonight is a result of what we're calling the Henley life. We want to do more of these things. We don't only want to talk in classrooms. We want to meet people online, let total strangers kind of coalesce into a group mind and come up with new ideas, new thoughts, and just enjoy the process of learning in an evening. It's something that's very important to me because I'm probably going to be in this university for a while. It looks like that's the way forward for me. But I want to contribute to a community that is constantly thinking about how we can make each other's lives better and ourselves. So kindness is the first one. I'm sure there are going to be others. I would love to invite you all back. So thank you for coming and thanks for your input. Most importantly, everything you've said tonight, hugely important. Before I forget, I'm going to save the chat. I know that Graham and I know that Kate and Mitzi are doing that, but I'm going to have a third copy anyway. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. And I hope you've had a good session. If you have, tweet about it. You can just hashtag Henley Life and we'll know that you were here, and you can tell people that that you came and spent an evening with us rather than watching, a reality program about rich people and their terrible struggles with each other at cocktail parties. This seems to be the majority of what's going on television at the moment. So let's do this maybe more often. I wouldn't mind. And if you want to join me, that would be brilliant. Thanks for coming. And until next time, cheers. Bye.
So first day was overwhelming. The first exercise that we did was the listening exercise, and how to realize how powerful just sitting and listening to the other person talking was, for me, life-changing. I felt comfortable enough and vulnerable enough to share in the group setting that we were in.
One thing that sold me on Henley was their tagline. It was the statement that reads, "We build people that build businesses that build Africa." And for me, that was profound because it puts me at the center of this program, right? And it also puts Africa at the center of this program without even looking at the perspectives, what the course entails. That alone sold me on Henley Business School. So I enrolled.
In your career, you do come to you hit the ceiling. At some point, one needs to empower and better themselves. And Henley was the only, I've looked at many other institutions, but Henley stood out for me as, being the best in Africa. And
First day was a bit daunting because you've got like leaders from different organizations and different industries.
I was very fortunate to have a very supportive team. So when I was having my off days and I wasn't feeling emotionally strong, the team was definitely there for me.
The lecturers, they're cutting edge in that you are lectured by people that have got the business experience, people that are running their own businesses, people that are bringing in all those contemporary, management frameworks and methodology into the class. It's not just like your textbook.
So first day was overwhelming. The first exercise that we did was the listening exercise, and how to realize how powerful just sitting and listening to the other person talking was, for me, life-changing. I felt comfortable enough and vulnerable enough to share in the group setting that we were in.
One thing that sold me on Henley was their tagline. It was the statement that reads, "We build people that build businesses that build Africa." And for me, that was profound because it puts me at the center of this program, right? And it also puts Africa at the center of this program without even looking at the perspectives, what the course entails. That alone sold me on Henley Business School. So I enrolled.
In your career, you do come to you hit a ceiling. At some point, one needs to empower and better themselves. And Henley was the only, I've looked at many other institutions, but Henley stood out for me as, being the best in Africa. And
First day was a bit daunting because you've got like leaders from different organizations and different industries.
I was very fortunate to have a very supportive team. So when I was having my off days and I wasn't feeling emotionally strong, the team was definitely there for me.
The lecturers, they're cutting edge in that you are lectured by people that have got the business experience, people that are running their own businesses, people that are bringing in all those contemporary management frameworks and methodology into the class. It's not just like your textbook.
So first day was overwhelming. The first exercise that we did was the listening exercise, and how to realize how powerful just sitting and listening to the other person talking was, for me, life-changing. I felt comfortable enough and vulnerable enough to share in the group setting that we were in.
One thing that sold me on Henley was their tagline. It was the statement that reads, "We build people that build businesses that build Africa." And for me, that was profound because it puts me at the center of this program, right? And it also puts Africa at the center of this program without even looking at the perspectives, what the course entails. That alone sold me on Henley Business School. So I enrolled.
In your career, you do come to you hit a ceiling. At some point, one needs to empower and better themselves. And Henley was the only, I've looked at many other institutions, but Henley stood out for me as, being the best in Africa. And
First day was a bit daunting because you've got like leaders from different organizations and different industries.
I was very fortunate to have a very supportive team. So when I was having my off days and I wasn't feeling emotionally strong, the team was definitely there for me.
The lecturers, they're cutting edge in that you are lectured by people that have got the business experience, people that are running their own businesses, people that are bringing in all those contemporary management frameworks and methodology into the class. It's not just like your textbook.